2019's Shazam is a very good movie. It was wholesome and cheesy in a way that reminds you of the best parts about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, for example. And it's also a movie that actually feels like it was made by a director with a unique vision that really wanted to tell a story, rather than feeling like a movie made by a committee of studio executives and different producers. It was fun, emotional, and had an actual message to say about the importance of family. That's why I was always excited about a sequel to it, since it was a great movie on its own right that planted the seeds for great future storylines. However, ever since James Gunn's announcement for his upcoming slate of DC projects that will kick off a new soft reboot of the DC Universe on films, a common thought among some fans is that DC's current slate of upcoming movies that are coming out this year in 2023 seem kinda pointless. I mean, I get it, we don't know which DCEU actors are gonna maintain their roles and which will stop playing these characters. We don't know if we'll get to see these versions of Shazam and Aquaman again. We don't know if the setups within these movies will ever get paid off. So some people feel like these movies aren't worth seeing simply because their shared universe is getting rebooted, that they basically don't matter. And to me, that's kind of a sad perspective and way of looking at art really. A film shouldn't be mainly judged on its value as a part of a cinematic universe, as simply another product within a lineup, and how many references and teases for future movies they can cram into a 2-hour runtime. A movie should be judged solely on its own merits. People should be able to go watch a movie solely because they want a satisfying and complete piece of art. We should be able to enjoy a film even if we know that it's not getting a sequel. It's just kinda sad to think that a movie is of lesser quality because it's not a part of an existing or active cinematic universe. All that should matter, in my opinion, is whether the movie is good or not. And in the case of Shazam, Fury of the Gods, I'm happy to say that, yes, this is a very good movie. It was honestly great to see these characters again, and we get to see how each young member of the Shazam family has developed in the years between the installments. This is a film series about family. It's about growing up. In the first installment, the focus was on Billy understanding the importance of accepting help from other people and the concept of a found family. And now in the sequel, we see him having to deal with his abandonment issues that stem from being abandoned by his own mother when he was a child. That's why he lashed out against the world and didn't let anybody in. He rejected everybody before they had the chance to reject him. But now that he's allowed himself to be in a family and be a part of other people's lives, he's afraid he's gonna get abandoned yet again. This, on top of the general pressure that comes from growing up and turning 18, is really getting to him, and it's cool to see the evolution of his character arc from the first movie, since he is no longer angry or angsty like he was, and finally has a family now, but he's still going through some internal conflict. We get to see how his character has matured and grown. In the first movie he was very troubled and selfish, kind of a dick, but in the sequel, now we get to see him actually care for his family and being empathetic. One thing I didn't like in the first one is that it felt like Zachary Levi and Asher Angel were playing different characters, even though they were meant to be the same. Zachary Levi was acting way too jovial and goofy when compared to how serious and somewhat depressed Asher Angel was playing Billy Batson. It felt like a disconnect there in the performances. But in Fury of the Gods, I feel like it's less of an issue, and how Billy Batson and Shazam were depicted felt more cohesive when compared to the first one. Another cool thing about the main conflict from the movie is that it stems from the consequences of the actions of both the Wizard and Billy Batson. The main villains of the movie, played by Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, are old gods whose father and the rest of the gods got their powers stolen when the Wizard made the original spell that harnessed the power of Shazam. In this movie, we found out that when the Wizard did that, he basically stole the power of those old gods and left their realm powerless. And now, thanks to the actions of Billy Batson in the first movie, these goddesses get unleashed into our human world and chaos ensues. It's definitely an interesting conflict that plays with the established Shazam mythos that heavily deals with gods and old world mythology. The movie has many references going from the comics to old Greek myth, and it's clear that the writers and everyone involved had a sincere interest in the film and its influences. It doesn't feel like such a corporate movie, it feels like the movie from a director that really wanted to tell a story. It's also funny. There are some jokes that don't land, of course, but for the most part, I thought it was clever, charming, and most importantly, they didn't undercut none of the serious moments by doing a joke afterwards. Even though it's a comedy, it knows when to be comedic and when to be dramatic. Just like the first movie, Fury of the Gods isn't afraid of allowing its actors to actually emote and get serious when the story calls for it, all the while still being a pretty funny movie throughout. The movie is funnier than the first, it's more conceptual and has more fun with its mythos, and it's all around just a really great film that is more than worth seeing in theaters in my opinion. I totally get why you just rather wait until it comes on streaming, but I believe it's worth seeing in theaters. Even though most box office predictions for it haven't been really good at all, most likely it'll underperform. And I get it, it's a hard sell. A movie about an unpopular superhero that comes from a dying cinematic universe. But again, we should be able to enjoy a blockbuster, even if we don't know if it'll get a sequel. All that matters is if the movie itself is good, which it is. Still, I like to think about the future, and Shazam is a character that I personally love. A big issue about him in the movies is that his whole appeal is him being a little kid that transforms into an idealized adult version of him, but it's hard for people to portray that when your young actors are growing up faster than you're making the movies. Shazam should really be a property where you try to make the sequels as planned out and fast as possible to accommodate for the actors' ages, kinda like the Harry Potter films, or they could shoot multiple films back to back, like with The Lord of the Rings. It's a large investment, but a Shazam trilogy that follows Billy's entire childhood is possible. They just gotta really plan and commit to it. However, I'd like to propose this idea to James Gunn and Peter Safran for Shazam's future in the DCU. How about if the next time we see Shazam, it's in an animated movie in the 2D, 3D style of Into the Spider-Verse, but set in the DCU. This would allow them to have more control over the young characters' ages, because the voice actors could grow up normally, but they could still control the ages of Billy Batson and the rest of the Shazam family, because, you know, they'd be animated. And it'd be awesome to get introduced to a new Shazam in an animated movie first, and then we get to see his voice actor appear in another DCU movie and see how Shazam looks like in live action. Like, imagine that the actor that will play Superman in the DCU appear in a Shazam animated movie voicing Superman, and we get to see how the DCU Superman looks like in an animated style. That would be very, very cool. Besides, animation really fits the Shazam mythos and the imaginative spirit of his stories, and it's a shame that we'll never get to see the Monster Society of Evil and the more wacky aspects about Shazam get fully explored. In fact, there's a post-credits scene in this very movie that follows up on the Mr. Mind scene from the first movie, and in this movie, they basically joke about why he's taking so goddamn long, probably because we're never gonna see it. Look, it's hard to ignore teases and setups that will never get resolved, especially if you're a lifelong fan that really gets excited about these characters. But the thing is that those teases don't really affect the main story of this movie. The main conflict that Billy has in the beginning of the movie gets resolved by the end of it. You get resolution. You also get to see Freddy have a nice character arc that gets fully resolved within the film. It's nice and complete. And whether or not it's part of an existing shared universe, whether if it's getting rebooted or not, the fact is that this movie is very good all on its own, and it's a really enjoyable time.